Hello everyone, welcome to the Buzz the Prey Manga. Today we continue the latest Global Freeze chapter, rewritten and edited by me in English for a smooth reading experience. All visuals and story flow are personally edited to give you the best manga style storytelling. Support the original creator by checking the official manga. So let's dive right into the today's chapter.
Chapter 25-20 for the Three-Headed Clan. Bharata. Indra returned from the moon, and this trip seemed to have smoothed out all the tiny thorns on his body. His aura was even deeper, and even his silence carried an astonishingly profound presence. He brought back not only the cold starlight, but also a wisp of Samuel's power, a dark darkness blessed by taboo, like a slow breath in his shadow. Gao Changkong's rebellion and departure is just another page on the calendar. Indra had already written this day into a footnote. It's best to just move on. He didn't care about Gao Changkong because in his view, fate was predetermined. What Gao Changkong didn't know was that from the very first day he chose to join Bharata, Indra knew that Gao Changkong would one day betray him. Although he was farsighted and could see the future but not the present, it did not affect his indifference towards Gao Changkong. Since fate is inevitable, let's just go with the flow. His gaze never lingered on the dispersal for too long, because he was always concerned with the next territory. Indra descended into the world beneath the earth, directly beneath the Bahawar Temple, the highest holy site in Bharata, which had been worshipped by all of Bharata for countless ages. In this country, where the entire population believes in religion, it now seems that their faith is indeed inevitable, rather than superstitious. The underground world is like an inverted greenhouse, with dampness creeping up from the insteps to the shoulders. The ancient trees here did not become fossils, but continued to grow. Their trunks were wider than city walls, and their roots stretched across the cave ceiling, stitching the stone dome into a dense network. The sky wasn't actually the sky, but a thin, phosphorescent mist. Green light seeped evenly from the mist, giving every outline a pool-like sheen. This wasn't Indra's first time here. The last time was at the beginning of the apocalypse, when he underwent the trial of the three gods. It was here that he gained even greater power. Indra wore a solemn robe, and his magnificent clothes, fair skin, and angular face all indicated his Brahmin identity. He traversed the mist and damp jungle, passed through towering ancient trees, reached out and brushed aside a banana leaf, and what appeared before him was an enormous underground sea. This is an ancient sea rich in mineral salts and microorganisms. The water is murky but not polluted, milky white with a hint of blue, and when it ripples gently, it emits tiny phosphorescent sparkles, as if the night has been ground into powder. The sea was so still that it made one think the whole world was holding its breath. A circle appears in the heart of the sea. Splash. First came the surging, then a huge shadow gradually emerged from beneath the sea. Three enormous heads burst from the water, their scales rubbing against each other with a low, metallic sound. And these three heads were actually connected to the same body. A gigantic, eerie green serpent, half of its body submerged in seawater, looked down at Indra, who had arrived there. Each of its heads has a completely different pair of eyes. The left pupil is like the rising sun, warm and bright. The center resembles the cold crystal of a dead star, clear yet merciless. The right side resembles a flame about to ignite, with a dark red hue flowing through it. The three-headed serpent slowly coiled in the sea, its body undulating between milky white and turquoise. Water slid down its scales in a fan shape, creating a light drizzle. It doesn't need to identify itself. The myth of Bharata has already provided its prototype. The shadows of the triune god merged into one within it. Creation, preservation, and destruction were housed within its three heads. These are the gods of Bharata, whom they have worshipped for countless ages. They are the guardian angels of humanity, the three-headed serpent clan. Indra stopped on the shore, his robes fluttering lightly in the tide. He wore a smile often seen in period dramas, a smile that was both comforting and announcing. He clasped his hands together and bowed his head in a gesture of reverence. Greetings to the great Vishnu. Vishnu is the title of one of the three chief leaders of the three-headed tribe. Alongside them are the well-known Shiva and Brahma. Vishnu's 3 heads gaze down, and his voice seemed to rise from a resonant cavity at the bottom of the sea. Brahma people, your loyalty has been acknowledged. When the world is turned upside down, the 3-headed tribe will protect you. Indra lowered his hands, standing very straight. I heard the promise, and I cherish it. But I come with a clearer prophecy. The future is not a one-way appeal for help, but a two-way connection. Bharata seeks your protection, and you need us in return. Upon hearing Indra's words, Vishnu's 3 heads revealed distinctly different lights in their eyes. He turned his head slightly to the left, as if he were looking him over. A wisp of white mist was exhaled from the right side, landing on the sea surface, and the mist spread out along the ripples. The voice from the center didn't blink. It seems you've gained extraordinary power on the moon. In the past, how dare Indra speak to him like that? Humanity, the race they nurtured, is as insignificant as dust before them. Vishnu always held Indra in high regard, and it was under his careful selection that Indra became the representative of the Bharata clan. However, it seems that the guy he promoted is no longer so obedient and sensible. It's just a small gift from fate. Indra took a step forward, his boots sinking gently into the moss and fine sand. After Earth unfolds, the wrinkles of the old era will be smoothed out, and all the kingdoms buried in the crevices of the planet will make their appearance. Even a powerful clan like the 3-headed clan cannot guarantee its survival in this era. He raised his eyes, his tone as gentle as ever. And we, the 6 generations of the Bharata kingdom, are willing to sincerely join hands with the triads to overcome these difficult times together. The 3 heads moved gently, and the huge shadow folded into 3 pieces on the sea of milk. Vishnu spoke, his voice thin. You are asking for a contract, not protection. Yes. Indra nodded. I will not place the Bharatas at the feet of the idols. I will place us beside you. We will repair the sacrificial altars and rebuild the gates leading to the earth. Correspondingly, when war comes, we will fight side by side. The right side of Vishnu's had emitted a very faint laugh, like a stone rolling underwater. You are allocating the future. I am stitching together the future. Indra's smile became even more serene. You are the deep sea of the old era, and we are the shallows of the new era. For the tides to rise and fall, there must be 2 ends. The eyes of the central head suddenly dimmed slightly. Your companions have already abandoned you. Your city will crumble because of the people's abandonment. What guarantees that your words will still be credible tomorrow? Indra's eyes flickered. Vishnu was subtly pointing him out. Of course, Deshirtian would not forget that it was the 3-headed clan that deliberately supported Gao Changkong, simply because they sensed his disloyalty and wanted to keep him in check. Unfortunately, Gao Changkong had calculated everything, but he hadn't foreseen fate's arrangements. In the end, the ambush on the moon failed. Chapter 25 Boundless, Divine Kingdom. Indra already harbored considerable resentment towards the 3-headed tribe. This balancing act nearly caused him to have an accident on the moon. Therefore, today, Indra, who has gained even greater power, went directly to Vishnu to demand an explanation. However, despite being a prophet, he spoke in a very mystical manner, feigning profundity as he said, Dispersion is the branches, not the trunk. Indra looked into the darkness beyond. I am listening to Garuda's footsteps, and I am watching where he is going. But Bharata is not the shadow of any one person. He is a river. What a river needs is its riverbed. As long as the riverbed doesn't collapse, the water will find its own direction. He opened his palm, his fingertips gleaming with a faint silver light, like dust brought down from the moonlight. As for mutual trust, I place myself above the contract. If I breach it, the shadow Samuel left me will devour me first. Mythical methods may not be elegant, but they are honest. The wind at the edge of Milky Sea became weaker. The 3-headed clan remained silent for a moment, their 3 heads fixed on the power in Emperor Shirtian's palm. That familiar aura is already etched into their genes. The aura of the Druk gods. the aura of the 7 most powerful druid kings who have become eternal immortals. How could they not be wary of Samuel, who came from the moon? After a long silence, Vishnu finally spoke. I have sensed your sincerity and your willingness to cooperate with you in this chaotic world. But do not forget the path you came from. Without the 3-headed race, there would be no Bharata. Indra clasped his hands together, lowered his head, and a slight smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. He succeeded in this gamble. Naturally, our tribe has always maintained absolute respect for the 3-headed tribe. Our tribe's beliefs will always be used by the 3-headed tribe. After he finished speaking, he took a step back. The green light of the milky sea slowly receded. The giant serpent said no more, and its enormous figure gradually disappeared into the sea until only the shallow ripples of the surface remained. Indra turned and walked back to the corridor paved with tree roots, his steps slow. He knew that this meeting, though devoid of drums and showers of flowers, was more solid than any ritual music. He also knew that the ground was in such a state of chaos that the boundaries were blurred, but the riverbed of Bharata would be subdued first. That's enough. You can turn to the next page now. After the calamity, the winds of Beihai were like the sharpest knife, cutting across the earth and treating all living beings as fish and meat. On the night Asgard fell into oblivion, the midnight sun was torn apart, and the inhabitants of northern Europe were swallowed up by a cold wave. Odin and Loki died in battle on the moon, which directly led to the loss of dominance and the power to protect the land by the Norse alliance army, Asgard. Although Hela, the goddess of death, has returned, her power index of only 20,000 points makes her completely useless when facing the invasion of alien races. Therefore, when foreign tribes appeared in the Nordic region, the land was completely overrun in less than 10 hours. Strangers spread across the fjords on the ice sheet, towns fractured between fire and frost, and convoys of refugees crossed half the continent, finally seeing the walls and domes of Bedegang in the southern sunshine. That was the last hope for the entire Nordic continent. Desperate refugees, whether theists or atheists, began to place their hopes on religion and deities. The city of Bedegang is small, with high but thin walls, and the stone surface of St. Peter's Square gleams pale in the blood and ash. Yet crowds still gathered, more than 300,000 faces crowding the outskirts of Bedegang, their numb eyes holding only a sliver of hope. May God bless you, someone shouted hoarsely, and countless others echoed in response. May God bless you. Merciful Lord, save us. We have lost all hope. The gates of evil have been opened, and demons are attacking humanity. We beg you to save our devout believers. Wailing and prayers filled the air, while some remained numb with despair at the loss of their homes. Some people were holding children, some were dragging elderly people's wheelchairs, and some were holding a body wrapped in a military blanket. The prayers rose in waves, one after another, like a tide pushing towards the temple. They didn't know if this tiny Bedegang could offer them hope. But for now, we can only try anything as a last resort. In front of them stood many clergymen in white robes, as well as Knights Templar in combat uniforms. These people looked at the swarming refugees with a hint of pity in their eyes, but no one made a move. Whether or not to accept these refugees requires His Holiness, the Pope's approval. The shouts and prayers grew louder and louder, and the tiny Bedegang seemed to be shattered by the sound. Amidst this wave of sound, the figure of the new pope slowly emerged from the towering white doors of St. John's Cathedral. Extreme light shone out from the church doors, as if it were not a person who came out, but a god. George Wiggins wore a white robe, the gold thread on the hem appearing warm and dignified in the sunlight. He walked out, and the whole world became bright. The dark clouds in the sky seemed to dissipate. The first thing all the refugees saw when they looked up was that ball of light, and they felt a sense of holiness and enlightenment. That's God. God has come to save us. The shouts came in waves, instantly spreading throughout the entire area of Bedegang. 16-year-old George Wiggins stood at the church entrance. He didn't raise his hand to signal for quiet. He simply stood at the edge of the balcony. The wind brushed past his sleeves, and white doves circled among the columns. Lost lambs. He suddenly let out a sigh. The next instant, the halo around the holy statue on the dome suddenly grew longer, as if an invisible hand was folding the light back. The ground trembled very slightly, the edges of the square slid outwards, and the street corridors outside the walls were like pages being turned over one by one. Boundless divine kingdom. His voice wasn't loud, but it seemed to land on everyone's eardrums. In the next instant, centered on Wiggins, the entire space of Betagang, a country covering less than 1 square kilometer, suddenly distorted. A second, unseen structure rapidly extends from the air, with colonnades behind colonnades, creating courtyards within courtyards. The square, which was originally only big enough to hold 10,000 people kneeling in worship, instantly stretched into an invisible, distant, and long space. Wiggins, who was just a few hundred meters away from them, was suddenly pulled to the ends of the earth, but the divine radiance remained blazing. The walls are no longer just stone and mortar, but rather like superimposed spatial planes, spreading outwards in concentric circles, with the streets stretching beyond sight. The child's sobs turned into astonishment. The old man pointed tremblingly at the magnified Betagan surrounding him. It's bigger. This is a miracle of the Lord. Some people prostrated themselves on the ground and wept, while others pressed the cross to their hearts and whispered words of gratitude over and over again. Chapter 25:26 The Power of the New Pope. Further away, the previously congested refugee procession was gently swallowed up, without pushing or shoving, without collapse, as if the city itself reached out and embraced them. Wiggins raised his right palm and lightly clasped his fingers together. This new pope has surprisingly displayed powerful spatial abilities. If Zhang Yi were here, he would definitely be extremely serious upon seeing this skill, because he will realize that Wiggins' spatial abilities are no less than his current abilities. Is this something a 16-year-old boy, once considered the successor to the former Pope King Long, could accomplish? However, the facts are right in front of us, and we can't deny them. Save the lost lambs. Wiggins calmly gave the order. The clergy immediately set to work, fetching large quantities of supplies and skillfully distributing, registering, and comforting the refugees. It wasn't so cold in God's kingdom, and when they were given some blankets, hot water, and food, they were moved to tears of gratitude. In times of disaster, the cost of gain for believers is extremely low. In peacetime, how many eggs would they have to give away, and how many brochures would they have to print to gain a single believer? It's much simpler now. However, it seems that the foundation of the Papal States is not to be underestimated. In terms of material reserves, they are very sufficient. They were able to handle around 300,000 refugees with ease and composure. Order was restored quickly. The crying turned into low sobs, and then only weary breathing remained. Many people knelt down in worship, and even those who did not believe in God suddenly gained faith, weeping and giving thanks to God and the Pope. Gentlemen. Wiggins' gaze swept across the crowd, landing on the narrow river outside the city and the distant, smoke-filled sky. The kingdom of the Lord is not just a stone and a wall. It is where you kneel and worship, and it is when you stand up. The refugees listened attentively to the teachings and received pamphlets distributed by the clergy along with their food. These were simplified versions of the Bible. Shortly after Wiggins finished speaking, a tall and imposing figure returned from outside, bearing the marks of blood and the weariness of the elements. Heavy footsteps echoed clearly on the newly paved path, while white flags fluttered in the wind. It was the Knights Templar. They were covered in blood, as if they had just returned from a great battle. Clearly, with the reappearance of various ancient races in the world, the Bitigo League cannot completely avoid being affected. The Templar Knights, responsible for providing armed protection, would have to resort to physical force when reasoning failed. The Knights Templar entered the square, while the others watched the newly arrived refugees from below. Only one person walked towards Pope Wiggins. His helmet had been removed, revealing bloodstains on his pale face, but his eyes were clear. Death Knight Arnold Olib, the leader of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, a cardinal whose status is second only to the Pope. He came down to the foot of the holy steps, knelt on one knee before Wiggins, and planted a long sword burning with pure white flames beside him. Blood that had not yet congealed remained on the blade of the holy sword. Fire slowly bloomed in that blood, quickly burning it into ashes without leaving a trace. His Majesty. Arnold lowered his head, his voice low and steady. We have repelled all the hostile alien races that appeared within a radius of 300 kilometers. Wiggins nodded slightly, his gaze sweeping over the ranks behind him. The holy sword is stained with blood, to uphold justice, not for bloodlust. You did well. I will heed your holy decree. Arnold looked up, the firelight flashing briefly in his pupils before disappearing. He slowly stood up, looking down at the densely packed 300,000 refugees below, his gaze becoming complex. This is the end times. The end times foretold in the Bible. The gates of hell are wide open, and demons are appearing on earth. Wiggins turned to face the square. The Lord said that only those who devoutly believe in him can be delivered from this calamity. Sunlight streamed down his shoulders, causing his white robe to flutter slightly. Gentlemen, he said, what we see today is a trial given to us by the Lord, but also an opportunity. He didn't shy away from the word timing, but rather emphasized it heavily. When calamity strikes, people's hearts are like candle flames in the wind. The flames need the wind to protect them, and the wind is order and faith. What the Vatican needs to do is not just to take them inside its walls, but to gather their fears and turn them into a beam of light that can illuminate their path. In the square, some people looked up, some wept softly, and some pressed their foreheads even harder to the ground. Wiggins' gaze fell on the row of refugees closest to the steps. It was a family of 3, and the man was holding a wooden carving brought from the north in his arms. The child was sleeping soundly, his breathing rising and falling on his small chest. Arnold. Wiggins' voice softened. Divide the knights into 3 parts. 1/3 to garrison, 1/3 to patrol, and 1/3 to accompany me into the temple. Starting tonight, the outer perimeter of the divine realm will be pushed outwards by another ring. Arnold's brow twitched almost imperceptibly. Take another step forward? Push it again. Wiggins gazed at the dark horizon in the distance. The alien races aren't just a passing fad. If the north is empty, the south will surge in. We won't hate them. We'll build our city in our hearts faster than they do. The boundless divine kingdom isn't about confrontation. It's about inclusiveness. It's about uniting scattered people into a force of faith. He paused, then lowered his voice, as if addressing Arnold, and also as addressing all those kneeling. Remember, years of famine are hammers. Only when the hammer falls can iron be made. We will place the fear of all people in our prayers, and we will lead the hopes of all people to the altar. Your blood will not be shed in vain. It will form a river of faith. Arnold bowed and said, Understood. Where are the other 2 of the 4 horsemen? Wiggins asked. The famine knights are guarding the western sea mouth, while the plague knights have entered the periver plains to set up a chapel of relief. The disaster came too quickly, and we were short-handed, so we had to split up our forces to carry out the operation. Arnold replied, Don't worry, everything will be fine. Wiggins' voice was somewhat immature, but his demeanor was mature. Our team will grow stronger and stronger. A strange undercurrent was surging in his eyes. The kingdom of God is boundless, and the greater the power of faith, the better, and the more believers, the better. The Knights Templar quickly set off again, the sounds of their armor clashing mingling with the chants of prayer, gradually blending into the newly expanded streetscape. The priest and nuns continued to hand out food and warm water to every trembling hand, and did not forget to preach at such times. Those bewildered eyes, upon hearing the contents of the Holy Scripture, felt as if they had grasped a lifeline, and their hearts were filled with a sense of reassurance. The flock of pigeons on the clock tower took off and landed again, their white feathers shimmering in the sunlight, like a tiny but persistent hope. Wiggins stood on the edge of the balcony, watching the procession disappear. He looked away and gently clasped his hands together in prayer. The boundless divine kingdom expanded and contracted in his palm, like the breath of the ocean tide. In the square, the shadows of more than 300,000 people stretched and shortened, eventually lying quietly on the white stone. The Lord is watching over us. He raised his head and looked up at the sky. Although he knew that the true God was in a higher dimension, or above in a physical sense, the act of looking up showed his piety. It's almost here. We're heading towards a new world. We've already obtained 2 portions of the power of the 7 demon kings of hell. Once we get the remaining 5, I'll be able to create the greatest miracle. And this is the true meaning of God's creation of the 6th generation. Here ends today's chapter. I hope you liked it. Kindly do also subscribe to my gaming channel. I have to Fina a way to survive. Thanks.